People tend to have a very strongly developed personality today, yet their soul is not half as strong as their personality. So if you're a stranger to a new town, a new city, and you visit the city, you're likely to find people with very strong personalities in that city. Today, you're unlikely to see strong souls unless you search for them. When you go further into the wilderness, further into the mountains, you're more likely to see soul, sacred self, than strongly developed personalities. Of course, as we know, there are two sides to us. There's our physical and psychological form, the form that we thought or started to believe was us until mental suffering began, and that's why we put the physiological and the psychological together. Your physiology is going to suffer when your psychology is incorrect, is not aligned. From the time you had your name, your knowledge, your religion, everything that's happened in your story and your past become your traits, become your perceptions. They also become everyone else's perceptions. And soon we start playing roles into those. So how we see ourselves and how others see us starts to trap us in identity. So you only know yourself as a personality identity full of traits, perceptions, thoughts, feelings. When we're children, soon enough we become self-conscious. We start seeing how people observe us and judge us, who they want us to be, who they expect us to be. And this makes us anxious, makes us frightened. When we feel observed, we feel fear. Whenever we want to appear in a certain way, we're deep into a personality mask. Now, when we go into a new city or a new town with a contemplative intelligence and an understanding of how people who are strong in personality, but possibly weak in spirituality, how they became who they were, was through expectations, through self-consciousness. They were expected to compete, to win. We were told our bodies are better than yours, stronger than yours. People were better artists and musicians and dancers than we were. And we fell short. The formulation of personality is a natural thing. But there's a point where it should come and must come to a natural end. We cannot stay wearing masks forever. Yet this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to deny beauty. Beauty which will save us and save the world. Personality needs to be replaced by something more true, genuine, and deeper. Eventually we have to find our soul identity. Of course, this requires some kind of conscious shift or spiritual awakening, so that we think in reality rather than perception. Now, of course, our personality will always remain. We're good at this, bad at that. We'll hide this, tell that. We'll cope this way and fumble forward that way. However, at some point, it can no longer give you a sense of who you are successfully. In other words, if you think who you really are is your angry, frustrated, competitive personality, you're wrong. And because life wants us to be right, true, suffering will come to shift our direction towards true north. This journey home is one of the biggest problems with the world today. No one knows, perceives, or understands that we're coming home. We take a trip out into the wild, wild ocean, and we get lost there. There's no destination. Where can you possibly arrive when you're not your sacred self, your true self, your authentic self? How can you possibly arrive at a new destination without yourself being there? This is impossible. So the waking up really is about being on the boat in the wild oceans and just one day realizing that it's not about the boat, about anything you possess. It's not about the knowledge of navigation that you have learned, how to sail, how to work the canvas and the rudder and the compass. It's about none of these things. That's the day that the real voyage begins. You're not how your body looks, how you sound. You're not what you can do. You're not your achievements or not what you know. The personality identity is so weak it starts to crumble just at the realization of who you essentially are. It is nothing physiological. It's not the money you've made or the records you have. Who I am is answered from a far, far deeper place. So our personality identity is really what separates us. When we were 2 years old, we realized that we were separate from our mother, that we did not think like her. We realized that we were different, that we wanted different things. And we grow up understanding that we are individuals. We do not realize, as we create our personality identity, that the formation of a spiritual identity one day will be necessary for individualized existence. So we recognize this personality identity because it wants to serve itself. Fair enough at the time. It sees life as competition, the preservation of self. It's drawn to lust. It seeks knowledge, information rather than wisdom or inspiration. Personal identity always seeks the prize, and in doing so, soon enough becomes resentful, full of false pride, complaining. Personal identity is materialistic. It takes perceived knowledge and says, I know, I'm convinced. But just because we're convinced that something's true doesn't mean it is. Personal identity is all built on sand. It's about self-denial, willful denial, and putting on a mask. And to keep that mask going, it ends up using fear, drama, and distrust. Constant busyness and distraction. The internal chatter of the mind has driven more than one insane. The seeking to try and make the false true makes people insane. The soul identity becomes your sacred self. It's the day, even the process, where you start to shift and realize the paradigm within which you once constructed your life. Remember that word constructed, very important. You constructed a life that ends. Now we know nothing truly ends. Why would it? What would be the point? So we start to believe, not in the boat to keep us afloat, not in our knowledge, not in the destination. We start to develop oneness, compassion, friendliness. You see, when we have a realization that we're not our personal identity, all the need for competition starts to end. There's no one to compete against but yourself. After all, metaphorically, you're out here on this boat alone. There's no one to compete against other than yourself. Even that will become a loving relationship rather than a competition. The identity of sacred self becomes gratitude, equality. By nature, it is altruistic, filled with authenticity, acceptance, even stillness, which our busyness and mind chatter used to hate. So the scientific evidence of all of this is look at your body. Always look at your body. Your body holds the story of all your suffering and trauma. Look how if you do not give up your competitiveness, how your body will do it for you. Love is patient, patient enough until your knees ache and your back bends, until your strength in your body weakens and the soul arises. Compassion, tolerance, and generosity have nothing to do with ego, competition, self-centeredness. It's a paradigm shift. Of course, we don't get rid of the body. That is suicide. We transcend and include the body, the heart, the mind. It all becomes part of your soul. That is how we get to know love from fear, light from dark, beauty from ugliness, something the world is trying to forget these days. When we no longer defend form, strengthen physical identity, our creative nature arises. Much of religion and spirituality de-emphasize personality identity and try and emphasize soul identity. And they do it without the competition if they're doing it right. But this is where he who's first is last and he who's last is first, and the meek shall inherit the earth starts to make sense. Some of the best of us that have ever lived said, I'm nobody. This is Buddha nature. I'm nobody, nowhere, in no time. Try and tell that to somebody who's defending their personality identity. They'll call you insane, and then you will know paradox for the first time. The meek are the egoless, dropping viewpoints, the need to be right, comparison, start to count less and less. These are the fruits of the spiritual journey. Who cares if someone is lost in ego mania? So whether it's through suffering, great love, great change, great impact, profound experience, whatever it takes for you to create a paradigm shift, understand that it is a shift in consciousness from identifying with the personality and the physical body and the thoughts that you think. We go from physiology and psychology to emotions and spirituality. We go from identifying with that physical body to a deeper connection with our sacred selves. Now, how is it that it brings such a deeper understanding of life? Because for a moment, for a time, we start to drop the story. 14 billion years in, and we know when our lives are compared to a wisp of wind, we create something and we defend it from 10 years old, 20 years old, 30 years old, and on we go. One day we defend this and one day we defend that. It's all folly. It's all knowledge. A profound, deep experience cannot be experienced from the IQ. It is only from a call to higher consciousness, far deeper mind, body, heart awareness, that we begin to understand the spiritual journey. And then we do what Einstein, of course, said we do. We start to question everything we once knew. This is the art of contemplation. Contemplation is about being fully present in body, heart, and mind. It's about being conscious of what is in a way that allows you to consciously respond and connect to it. It is the dance with the physical, psychological, emotional, and spiritual, and has a tendency to heal people and then transform them. Personality to spiritual. Understanding the nature of reality is the life journey. It's about dropping the false, the lies that the snake told us in the garden. The flood of technology and knowledge is not the way. Of course, it's made depression, trauma, stress a whole lot worse. Very cleverly, it has moved us into the prison of personality, a self-imposed life of. But how do you teach someone who's full of fear to embrace the mysterious, the unknown, the uncertain? How do you get them to embrace the size and scope of the universe and its energy and everything it's about? You don't. We must go through the journey. We must first take on the spiritual identity and then move to the soul identity, where we find our sacred selves. So is anyone guilty when they were not able to be fully awake, fully active, or fully aware, or fully alive even? We need to forgive and then integrate. On that day, we will end all war, all separation. We'll end the ego. So know this about your journey. Sometimes the hardest times we will have are the times when we choose our soul identity, so that when people walk into a new town, they'll see you standing out straight away, standing out from those with strong personality identities, stuck in self, in survival, in competition, like once you were stuck in competition. When you go beyond your physiology and your psychology, you'll find the loving parts of you that have no trouble loving others, nature and beauty, things that you may have disconnected from in your life. When you go beyond that personal identity, you experience the loving parts of you, patience, caring, appreciation, gratitude, contentment, and the awe of life. Each time you choose not to act on a frightened, fearful part of your personality identity, you create authentic power, and you grow consciously, emotionally, and spiritually. Perfect love casts out fear, as A Course in Miracles reminds us. Fear creates a state, of course, as we remind ourselves, that just doesn't exist, just like fear. Start to look at triggers and problems as opportunities, as glimmers, as steps on the highway to heaven. And of course, the kingdom of heaven is within. Look for broad avenues. Get beyond the chatter of the mind. Create an elevated emotion. Allow yourself to feel fulfillment and joy, consciousness, awareness, and freedom. If you choose to take them, they are right here for you. Personalities are not equal. They're always competing. But souls, sacred selves, are equal. It is the end of two, the end of competition, end of separation, and of course all war and violence, the end of the tireless Cain and Abel repetition. Perfect love casts out fear. So let's be perfect love. Let's align personal identity with our soul's purpose. This is oneness, authentic power. And this is a reminder of the journey that we take every day. Every day, when we see hatred, we can operate from soul identity and so love. Every day, where there is injury, we can forgive. When we see people doubting, we can bring faith. When they despair, we'll give them hope. Where there is darkness, you will be the light. St. Francis continues to say, it is in this giving of our soul identity, in that busy town, that we receive. It is in forgiving that we are forgiven. It is in the giving away of ourselves that we find ourselves. So it is in dying to the self that we are born to eternal life. It's the shedding of the skin, and this is the journey. So today, let's never forget the importance of that journey and what we are doing here. Transcending the mind is no easy task. Smashing through defenses is something people will put off for a lifetime, but not you. You're here, learning, listening, and connecting. That is oneness, and it is proof of life eternal. Keep on keeping on, and you will change the world, one random act at a time. Namaste.